At 6:47 a.m., I'm staring at my destroyed fence and the BMW wrapped around it. My HOA president, Patricia, is screaming at the cops. That fence was illegally placed. Derek should pay for my son's car repairs. Her drunk son, Brandon, just crashed into my property and she wants me to pay for his car. I'm crunching through broken glass, smelling antifreeze in the winter air, watching this woman demand I cover the damage her kid caused to my home. The tow truck winch screeches as they load up Brandon's mangled BMW, and Patricia's still yelling about how it's all my fault. But by the time this story's over, they'll be towing a lot more than just his car. What would you do if your HOA Karen blamed you for her drunk son's property damage? And where are you watching from? Drop your worst HOA nightmare in the comments. 6 months ago, I thought I'd found peace. Derek Morrison, 52, retired electrician after 28 years wiring Arizona construction sites. Bought my dream house in Maple Ridge Estates' quiet suburb where people still wave. I'm a widower. Sarah lost her cancer fight 2 years back, and this house was my healing project. Spent $8,000 on cedar fencing and raised beds, every post laser level. Saturday morning smelling fresh cut wood, coffee steaming while I built something beautiful again. Then Patricia Westmont decided I didn't belong. Patricia's ruled our HOA for 6 years straight. 48, drives a white Escalade, wears that country club smile that cuts like glass. Husband Craig runs city planning. Son Brandon, 19, treats daddy's BMW like his personal weapon. Her specialty? Weaponized bureaucracy. Friends get polite warnings. Threats get systematic destruction. 3 months before the crash, she appeared with a measuring tape. Derek, I'm concerned about your fence placement. She discovered my fence was 2 inches over the property line. 2 inches on an $8,000 installation I'd triple-checked. $1,200 in violation fees, 30 days to remove it. I produced my survey documents stamped, certified, legal. She glanced at them like expired coupons. Surveys aren't always accurate. The board will decide. Property surveys conducted by licensed surveyors carry legal weight in court disputes. HOA boards cannot simply override them without cause. The harassment campaign launched immediately. Weekly violations, grass half-inch too long, Christmas lights 1 day late, mailbox painted incorrect black. The metallic slam of my mailbox being stuffed with violation notices became my daily alarm clock. Mrs. Stella got fined for bird feeders, Janet Rodriguez for cultural decorations, Mike Brennan for visible Christmas lights. Meanwhile, Brandon's BMW lived on their lawn. Craig's Sunday morning leaf blower violated noise ordinances. Patricia's decorative rocks clearly crossed her own property line. December 15th, 2:30 a.m., explosion sound jolts me awake. Outside, in pajamas and boots, I find Brandon's BMW accordion folded around my fence. Kids wobbling, phone pressed to ear. "Mom, help!" I really screwed up. Patricia materialized faster than the cops, already dressed, camera ready, photographing my property instead of checking her son's pulse. Officer Martinez arrived to Patricia's performance. Violation folders, crocodile tears, claims about my dangerous fence creating blind spots. Antifreeze and lavender perfume created a sickly sweet cocktail as she pointed accusingly. This fence has been illegally positioned for months. Derek should cover my son's repairs. Standing there watching her try to pin a drunk driving accident on my legal fence, I realized this wasn't random harassment. This was Patricia eliminating a neighbor who didn't bow to her authority. She'd picked the wrong electrician to mess with. The police report Officer Martinez filed that night made my blood boil. Vehicle struck illegally positioned fence. 3 little words that flipped reality upside down. Patricia arrived at the scene with a manila folder thicker than a Phoenix phone book, stuffed with every petty violation she'd invented over 3 months. Photos of my allegedly long grass, my supposedly wrong-colored mailbox, my Christmas wreath hanging inappropriately. "Officer, this fence creates dangerous blind spots," she sobbed, dabbing tears with tissues that materialized like magic tricks. "I've documented safety concerns for months." Behind her, Brandon swayed like a palm tree in a hurricane, reeking of tequila and entitlement. The kid couldn't walk straight, but somehow my stationary fence was the hazard. 2 days later, Patricia's insurance company demanded I cover $28,000 in BMW repairs. When I laughed and hung up, they sent a formal letter claiming property owner liability for improperly placed structures. Time for my counterpunch. Maria Santos from my insurance company showed up looking skeptical. "Mr. Morrison, I need to document this accident scene." The metallic click of her tape measure against fence posts sounded like a countdown timer as she walked my entire property line. 45 minutes later, Maria snapped her folder shut. "Your fence is 4 feet inside your property line. This BMW was traveling at excessive speed. We're denying their claim entirely." I remembered something from my construction days. Property owners in Arizona can only be held liable for accidents caused by structures that actually violate building codes. Spite fences don't qualify. Patricia's legal theory had more holes than Swiss cheese. But Patricia wasn't done. She called an emergency HOA board meeting for December 20th. Unsafe fence removal and member liability assessment. Walking into that community center felt like entering a kangaroo court. 12 residents, Patricia's PowerPoint titled "Neighborhood Safety Crisis," and the suffocating smell of burnt coffee mixing with her lavender perfume under buzzing fluorescent lights. She'd blown up photos of every tiny imperfection on my property, loose boards, faded stains into poster-sized evidence. Her expert witness? Brother-in-law Randy, a gym teacher who testified my fence created vehicular sight line obstruction consistent with accident causation. During my 5-minute rebuttal, I stood up calmly. "Patricia, your son was drunk. My fence didn't move. Your time is up, Mr. Morrison. Vote 4-1 to fine me $2,500, fence removal in 30 days. Only Mrs. Stella supported me, sitting in back avoiding Patricia's death glare. Walking to my truck, Patricia's victory laugh echoed across the parking lot like a hyena celebrating a kill. She thought she'd won. What she didn't know was that I'd recorded everything on my phone. That night, reviewing the audio, I caught Patricia's fatal contradiction. In March, she'd approved my fence design at the annual meeting. Tonight she called it a clear and present danger. Frank Kowalski knocked around 10 p.m., retired Phoenix PD. He'd watched Patricia's operation for years. She pulled this stunt with the Hendersons 3 years ago, forced them to tear down their deck, claimed setback violations. They moved rather than fight. Black coffee steam rose between us on my porch. "Derek, Patricia needs fine revenue. Know what she spent landscaping her house last spring? $12,000. All from violation fines." Frank's cop instincts cut straight to motive. "This isn't about your fence. Brandon's DUI creates massive liability repairs, lawsuits, insurance premiums. She's desperate to shift blame." As Frank left, I realized Patricia's first strategic error. She'd documented her corruption in official meeting minutes, creating a paper trail of contradictory statements about my fence. Opening my laptop, I started building my case. Patricia wanted legal warfare? She'd picked the wrong retired electrician. I knew how to read blueprints, document everything, and wire systems that actually functioned. Time to teach Patricia how real electrical work gets done. December 23rd brought an early Christmas gift, certified mail from Patricia. Final notice: fence removal required within 30 days or face $500 daily penalties. But Patricia was just getting warmed up. The same morning, my mailbox received another love letter, this one from the city planning office. Craig Westmont had filed an official complaint about my unpermitted structure creating public safety hazards. Merry Christmas from the corruption family. I spent Christmas morning doing what every retiree dreams of, researching government records instead of opening presents. 28 years wiring buildings taught me to trace problems to their source, and Patricia's power grid had some serious code violations. County property records revealed Patricia's dirty secret. Her fence extended 18 inches over the property line, triple the violation she'd accused me of. Same licensed surveyor, same legal weight. From my construction days, I knew certified surveys trump HOA opinions every single time. Better yet, HOA bylaws section 4.7 was crystal clear. Board members must recuse themselves from family-related votes. Patricia had presided over her own son's case, making every decision legally void. Frank knocked on my door December 28th, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Derek, my police buddies did some digging." He dropped a thick folder on my kitchen table. Brandon's rap sheet read like a drunk driving textbook. 3 accidents, 2 DUIs, 1 sealed juvenile reckless endangerment charge. Patricia hadn't just been harassing neighbors, she'd been using HOA power to cover her son's criminal escalation. "Gets better," Frank continued. Craig filed your fence complaint December 16th, one day after the crash, hearings January 3rd, and Daddy's presiding over Mommy's vendetta. The smell of snow and Frank's coffee couldn't mask the stench of organized corruption. HOA president wife, city planning husband, criminal son, a perfect storm aimed at one retired electrician. That afternoon, I drove downtown to the courthouse basement. The musty smell of old documents reminded me of Sarah's hospital room, but this time I wasn't helpless. Filing an ethics complaint against Craig cost $25 in 30 minutes. Conflict of interest violations carry criminal penalties in Arizona. Next stop, attorney Sarah Martinez's office. Frank's recommendation, specializing in HOA abuse cases. Sarah examined my evidence like a detective studying murder weapons. Derek, you've got the holy trinity of legal claims: HOA harassment, government corruption, and civil rights violations. Her ancient copy machine groaned like a dying elephant, duplicating everything for court filing. But Sarah's predatory smile told me she'd seen corrupt HOAs before. Patricia's fatal flaw? She documented everything. Every violation notice, every meeting vote, every arbitrary decision. She's built our case for us. The real breakthrough came when Sarah cross-referenced Brandon's accidents with Patricia's violation campaigns. Every time her son faced legal trouble, Patricia launched harassment campaigns against neighbors to generate fine revenue for legal fees. Mrs. Stella in 2023 after Brandon's first DUI, the Hendersons in 2022 after his reckless driving charge, now me after his BMW fence wrapping incident. This isn't random harassment, Sarah explained, highlighting the timeline. This is systematic extortion using HOA authority to fund family legal problems. Walking to my truck, winter air sharp in my lungs, I felt something electric building. Not just anger anticipation. Patricia had spent months trying to wire me for destruction, but she'd accidentally created the perfect short circuit. Every documented violation, every recorded threat, every corrupt vote was now evidence in multiple criminal investigations. Patricia thought she was building a case against me. Instead, she'd been building her own electric chair. January brought Patricia's Scorched Earth campaign. Brandon's parties started targeting my sleep with surgical precision. Bass pounding through bedroom walls at exactly 2 a.m., drunk college kids screaming until sunrise. When I called police, Officer Martinez sounded defeated. Civil matter, Mr. Morrison. Try talking to his parents. Sure, ask Patricia to control her attack dog. Daily violation notices multiplied like a virus. Patricia photographed my property with CSI-level obsession, inventing infractions that defied physics. Garden hose coiled wrong direction, $50. Mailbox scratched by wind-damaged community fixtures. My doormat positioned 2 inches left of center, aesthetic violations. The metallic slam of my mailbox became psychological warfare. Every clang meant another invented fine, another legal threat, another twist in Patricia's torture machine. Anonymous complaints flooded city offices about my unlicensed electrical work. Every camera, every outlet, every wire I'd legally installed, suddenly code violations requiring inspector visits at my expense. Inspector Rodriguez arrived looking apologetic. After 3 hours examining every connection, Mr. Morrison, your work is textbook perfect. Better than most licensed contractors. Whoever's filing these complaints is wasting taxpayer money. But Patricia's strategy was working. My sleep shattered, stress spiking, retirement savings bleeding from legal fees and bogus inspections. She was death by 1,000 cuts, professionally administered. The breaking point arrived January 15th. Returning from groceries, I found Brandon's BMW blocking my driveway like a roadblock. The kid sat on his hood, smirking with practiced arrogance. Brandon, please move your car. Make me, Grandpa. Afternoon sun blazed off his BMW's hood, heat waves matching my rising fury. This wasn't teenage rebellion. This was calculated intimidation under royal protection. 2 hours after calling police, Officer Martinez arrived frustrated. He's technically on public property. Civil matter. Blocking driveways for hours is legal? Unless he threatens violence. The officer's shrug spoke volumes. Brandon moved his car 3 inches forward, still blocking half my driveway. His message crystal clear. The law couldn't touch him. That night, Frank introduced me to surveillance reality. Patricia's banking on you staying isolated and angry. Time to get smart instead. We installed motion cameras at every entrance, started detailed harassment logs with timestamps. Frank's cop wisdom. Documentation beats emotion in court every single time. The breakthrough came when my neighbors found their courage. Mrs. Stella approached January 20th, hands shaking as she clutched an envelope thick as a novel. "Mr. Derek, I cannot hide anymore. 18 months of Patricia's violation terrorism, bird feeder infractions, garden decoration citations, even excessive cultural displays during Chinese New Year. The elderly woman had been systematically brutalized into submission. She threatens eviction if I support you," Mrs. Stella whispered. "But watching her destroy you, I cannot be coward anymore." Janet Rodriguez arrived that evening, hospital antiseptic still clinging to her scrubs. "Derek heard about your situation. Patricia tried the same with me. Her evidence. Patricia attempting to define her for Day of the Dead decorations being culturally inappropriate. Janet's response had been swift state civil rights discrimination complaint that made Patricia back down immediately. Mike Brennan showed up Saturday with coffee and bitter laughter. Patricia cited me for excessive holiday enthusiasm, Christmas lights visible from the street. We gathered in my garage that evening, 8 neighbors bearing violation folders like war wounds. Motor oil and sawdust mixed with nervous energy as everyone shared their harassment stories. The pattern exploded into focus. Patricia systematically targeted anyone who wouldn't grovel. Single mothers, elderly residents, minorities, retirees, vulnerable people she could intimidate individually. Frank calculated the damage. $31,000 in fines over 18 months. Every dollar funding Patricia's landscaping, Brandon's legal fees, and family lifestyle maintenance. "This isn't HOA management," Frank's cop instincts crystallized. "This is racketeering with a neighborhood association license." Here's what Patricia didn't anticipate. Nurses, teachers, and retirees don't intimidate easily once they understand the game. Janet stood up, medical authority in her voice. "Class action lawsuit. Share costs, present united front, end this systematic abuse." Mrs. Stella spoke first. "I am finished being afraid." Mike nodded grimly. "Let's destroy her." One by one, they committed to warfare. Patricia had spent 18 months dividing and conquering individual neighbors. She'd accidentally forged her own rebellion army. Frank knocked on my door January 25th wearing the smile of a cop who'd just cracked a cold case. "Derek, remember how you always wondered why Patricia needed those violation fines so badly?" He dropped a manila folder on my kitchen table. "Wonder no more." HOA bank records. Public documents that Patricia forgot were actually public. The first transaction made my blood sing. $12,000 in landscaping improvements, every dollar spent within 50 feet of Patricia's house. Her roses, her fountain, her decorative walkways, all funded by neighbor harassment fines. But the real treasure was deeper in the stack. Consulting fees, Frank pointed to highlighted entries. $6,000 paid to Westmont Property Services, Brandon Consulting LLC, and Craig's Construction Advisory. 3 companies, all registered to Patricia's family members. She'd been paying herself consulting fees with HOA money while terrorizing neighbors to generate the revenue. The knockout punch came on page 5. HOA insurance policy exclusions. Coverage void for board member conflicts of interest. Every corrupt decision Patricia made created personal financial liability. My electrical background kicked in when insurance companies discover fraud. They don't just deny future claims. They demand refunds of all previous payments, with interest and penalties. But Mrs. Stella delivered the smoking gun that changed everything. She approached my door that afternoon, clutching an envelope like it contained nuclear codes. "Mr. Derek, I found something in my old papers. Original 2018 neighborhood development plans. Complete architectural drawings showing every approved structure, every property boundary, every planned improvement, including my fence, clearly marked as approved perimeter fencing, with Patricia Westmont's signature authorizing it. She approved your exact fence when she needed neighborhood votes," I whispered, studying her signature. "Now she's calling it dangerous to avoid paying for Brandon's damage." The power dynamic flipped like a breaker switching on. My phone rang. Maria Santos from insurance. "Mr. Morrison, major update. Patricia's company denied Brandon's claim due to DUI. She's personally liable for $28,000 in repairs." Maria's voice carried predatory satisfaction. "Better news, we discovered Brandon had 2 previous accidents with similar claims." Our fraud unit is investigating a pattern. The beautiful truth crystallized like ice forming. Patricia wasn't harassing me about fence safety. She was facing financial catastrophe, BMW repairs, insurance fraud investigations, Brandon's DUI legal fees, and desperately trying to shift liability anywhere but her own wallet. Every violation notice was economic terrorism. Every board meeting was fraud documentation. Every harassment campaign was evidence of systematic corruption. Sarah Martinez called that evening with the final puzzle piece. Derek, I mapped Patricia's violation campaigns against Brandon's legal troubles. Perfect correlation. Mrs. Stella's harassment started 1 week after Brandon's first DUI. Henderson's deck demolition demand came 2 days after his reckless driving charge. My fence attacks began 24 hours after his BMW crashed. This isn't HOA management, Sarah concluded. This is organized racketeering. Patricia generates fines to pay family legal bills, then uses board authority to cover family crimes. That night in my garage, surrounded by evidence boxes that now reached the ceiling, I realized Patricia's desperation had exposed her entire criminal operation. Every attempt to destroy me had documented another layer of fraud. She'd been so focused on making me pay for Brandon's mistakes that she'd created a perfect paper trail of her own corruption. The smell of sawdust mixed with anticipation as I organized the final evidence folder. Patricia thought she was playing chess with some retired electrician who didn't understand power. She had no idea I'd been wiring the perfect trap to electrocute her entire criminal empire. Time to flip the switch and watch her world burn. My garage became mission control for neighborhood justice. Frank arrived Monday morning with coffee and cop wisdom. Derek, you've got enough evidence to sink Patricia, but evidence without strategy is just expensive paperwork. We cleared my workbench, spreading documents across its surface like battle plans. Property surveys, violation notices, bank records, meeting recordings, insurance fraud documentation, everything organized chronologically to tell Patricia's corruption story. The smell of fresh printer ink mixed with sawdust as we created evidence packets for each government agency. State Attorney General, County Prosecutor, Insurance Fraud Unit, Civil Rights Commission. Patricia was about to face more investigations than a mob boss. Mrs. Stella knocked around noon, no longer the trembling woman from 3 weeks ago. Mr. Derek, I brought reinforcements. Behind her stood Janet Rodriguez and Mike Brennan, along with 4 neighbors I barely knew. All carrying violation folders, all ready for warfare. We hired Sarah Martinez for class action representation, Janet announced, her nurse's authority evident. 14 homeowners, combined fines totaling $31,000 over 18 months. Sarah arrived that afternoon with legal firepower that made my retired electrician heart proud. 3 distinct lawsuits, federal civil rights violations for selective enforcement, state racketeering charges for systematic fraud, and personal liability claims for harassment damages. From my construction days, I remembered something about class action lawsuits. Multiple plaintiffs sharing costs can challenge corruption more effectively than individual complaints. Patricia had picked fights with the wrong neighborhood. Frank spread out his investigation timeline on my workbench. Patricia's pattern is beautiful in its stupidity. Every harassment campaign corresponds to Brandon's legal troubles. DUI arrest. Mrs. Stella targeted for cultural violations. Reckless driving charge. Henderson family deck demolition. BMW crash. Derek fence harassment. The correlation was prosecutor perfect. She's been using HOA authority to fund family legal defense, Frank continued. That's federal racketeering, state embezzlement, and civil fraud. Patricia's looking at potential prison time. Sarah reviewed our evidence with predatory satisfaction. Derek, this is prosecutorial gold. Patricia documented her own crimes in official HOA records. The technical preparation began immediately. I upgraded security cameras to record in 4K resolution, installed backup power systems, created cloud storage for all evidence files. 28 years wiring buildings taught me redundant systems prevent catastrophic failures. Frank contributed police documentation techniques, evidence chain of custody, witness statement formats, harassment incident reports that would hold up in court. Patricia's counting on you being amateur. Time to go professional. The media angle emerged when Janet mentioned her sister worked for Channel 7 investigative unit. Consumer protection stories about HOA abuse rate through the roof. Patricia's systematic fraud could be statewide news. I hesitated about television exposure, but Frank's cop instincts were sharp. Derek, public pressure works when official channels move slowly. Patricia's built her power on secrecy and intimidation. Sunlight kills corruption faster than legal proceedings. The breakthrough came when Sarah cross-referenced HOA spending with city planning decisions. Craig had approved zoning variances benefiting properties where Patricia collected the most violation fines. Government corruption, Sarah explained, highlighting the connections. Craig uses planning authority to increase property values. Patricia uses HOA power to generate fine revenue. Both benefit financially from neighbor harassment. By week's end, my garage looked like FBI field headquarters. Evidence boxes labeled by crime type, investigation timelines covering entire walls, communication logs documenting every harassment incident. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while neighbors worked past midnight preparing their cases. Mike Brennan created neighborhood contact lists, organizing residents willing to testify about Patricia's selective enforcement. Janet coordinated medical documentation. Several elderly neighbors showed stress-related health impacts from constant harassment. Mrs. Stella surprised everyone with her organization skills, creating detailed financial analysis of HOA expenditures versus legitimate association costs. Her accounting background revealed Patricia had diverted over 40% of annual dues to family-related expenses. Frank established communication protocols with his police contacts, ensuring our evidence reached appropriate investigators without Patricia's interference. She's got City Hall connections, but state and federal agencies don't care about suburban politics. The final piece fell into place when Sarah's paralegal discovered Patricia's biggest mistake. She'd personally guaranteed Brandon's car loan using HOA funds as collateral. When the insurance company demanded repayment, they could seize association assets Patricia had illegally pledged. Every homeowner becomes a victim when their HOA president uses association funds for personal guarantees, Sarah explained. That's breach of fiduciary duty with criminal penalties. Saturday night, reviewing our completed battle plan, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Sarah's final hospital stay. Absolute certainty about the future. Patricia had spent months trying to wire me for destruction, but she'd accidentally created the perfect circuit for her own electrocution. Every harassment attempt had generated evidence, every corrupt decision had been documented, every abuse of power had been recorded for prosecution. The system was ready. All connections verified, all components tested, all safety measures bypassed. Time to flip the switch and watch Patricia's world explode. Patricia's response to my restraining order filing was immediate and nuclear. February 1st, 6 a.m., my phone rang with news that made my coffee taste like victory. Mr. Morrison, this is Sergeant Williams, County Sheriff. We served Patricia Westmont with harassment restraining order papers last night. Thought you should know she didn't take it well. Patricia's meltdown at the sheriff's office became legendary, screaming about illegal conspiracies, demanding to speak to supervisors, threatening lawsuits against everyone from the sheriff to the county clerk. Her plastic suburban facade cracked like cheap veneer under pressure. But cornered animals fight dirtiest when they're wounded. The sabotage started immediately. Brandon appeared at 3 a.m. with bolt cutters, caught on my security cameras loosening fence posts along my property line. Amateur hour. The kid left fingerprints on the tools and footprints in my garden soil. Patricia escalated to character assassination. Door-to-door visits, spreading rumors about my dangerous electrical work, my mental instability after wife's death, my vendetta against successful families. The desperation reeked like overheated electrical components. Then came the nuclear option, complaints to state agencies that could destroy my retirement. The Arizona Electrical Board received anonymous reports claiming I was performing unlicensed commercial work, violating contractor regulations, creating safety hazards with unauthorized installations. Patricia had researched every possible angle to attack my professional reputation. Mr. Morrison, this is Inspector Davis from the State Electrical Board. We've received multiple complaints about unlicensed electrical work at your residence. 3 hours of detailed inspection followed. Every camera, every outlet, every wire connection examined with microscopic intensity. Inspector Davis emerged looking frustrated. Sir, your work exceeds current code requirements. Better than most licensed contractors I inspect. Whoever filed these complaints wasted state resources. But Patricia wasn't finished destroying lives. The IRS received anonymous tips about unreported electrical income, forcing tax audits of my retirement finances. Social Security Administration got complaints about fraudulent benefit claims. Veterans Affairs received reports about exaggerated disability ratings. Every government agency that touched my life suddenly required detailed documentation proving I wasn't a criminal. The bureaucratic harassment consumed weeks of time, hundreds of dollars in documentation fees, countless hours proving my innocence of imaginary crimes. Frank watched Patricia's desperation with cop-trained eyes. She's throwing everything at the wall, hoping something sticks. Classic behavior of criminals facing exposure. The bribery attempt came February 15th. Craig Westmont approached me at the grocery store with practiced casualness. "Derek, been thinking about this fence situation. Maybe we can find middle ground." His proposition was elegant in its corruption. Voluntarily move my fence 2 feet inward, accept $5,000 in goodwill compensation, and Patricia would agree to leave you alone permanently. I recorded every word on my phone app while pretending to consider his offer. "Let me think about it, Craig." His smile carried the oily satisfaction of someone who thought he'd bought his way out of criminal prosecution. "Smart choice, Derek. Sometimes compromise serves everyone better than conflict." Walking away, I realized Craig had just provided prosecutors with perfect evidence of attempted bribery and obstruction of justice. The Westmont family was digging their legal graves deeper with every desperate move. Sarah Martinez called that evening with updates that made my tactical heart sing. "Derek, Patricia's harassment escalation is prosecutorial gold. Every desperate move she makes generates more evidence. State Attorney General's office had opened formal investigation into HOA fund embezzlement. Insurance Fraud Unit was reviewing Brandon's accident history for systematic claim fraud. Civil Rights Commission was examining discrimination patterns in Patricia's violation campaigns. She's facing potential federal racketeering charges, state embezzlement prosecution, and civil liability that could bankrupt her family," Sarah continued. "Her desperate attempts to destroy you are actually accelerating her own destruction." But Patricia saved her most vicious attack for last. February 20th brought news that tested my retired electrician composure. Anonymous complaints to Child Protective Services claimed I was inappropriate around neighborhood children, creating unsafe environments with electrical hazards, displaying erratic behavior consistent with mental instability. CPS investigator Jennifer Walsh arrived looking like she'd rather investigate actual child abuse than suburban neighbor disputes. 2 hours examining my property, reviewing complaint details, interviewing character witnesses. "Mr. Morrison, these complaints are clearly fraudulent. Professional harassment designed to waste agency resources and damage your reputation." Walsh's report became evidence in our criminal case against Patricia. False reporting to Child Protection Services carries felony penalties in Arizona. That night, organizing Patricia's escalating crimes into prosecution files, I felt electricity building toward inevitable explosion. Every desperate attempt to destroy me had documented her systematic criminality. The smell of fresh evidence packets mixed with garage sawdust as I labeled the latest harassment documentation. Patricia thought escalating attacks would force my surrender. Instead, she'd provided prosecutors with perfect evidence of continuing criminal enterprise, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. The electrical storm was ready to strike. February 25th brought the sound I'd been waiting for. Official government vehicles rolling through Maple Ridge Estates. State investigators arrived like a SWAT team in business suits. Attorney General's office, Insurance Fraud Unit, Civil Rights Commission. Patricia's doorbell hadn't stopped ringing since sunrise. The smell of bureaucratic justice mixed with morning coffee as I watched through my kitchen window. Frank knocked around noon wearing his biggest cop grin. "Derek, Patricia's been placed on administrative leave from the HOA board pending criminal investigation. Craig's suspended from city planning pending ethics review." The Westmont dynasty was crumbling faster than a house built without permits. But Patricia's nuclear meltdown was just getting started. She hired private investigator Marcus Webb to dig up dirt on everyone who'd testified against her. Credit reports, employment records, medical histories. Webb went full stalker mode, trying to find ammunition for character assassination. The PI's mistake was approaching Mrs. Stella with threats about her immigration status. Big problem. Mrs. Stella was born in San Francisco, and her late husband was a decorated Navy veteran. Webb's intimidation attempt became federal witness tampering charges. Patricia's desperation reached psychotic levels when Webb uncovered Sarah's medical records from her cancer treatment. She actually tried to use my dead wife's suffering to paint me as emotionally unstable and unreliable. That crossed the line from harassment into pure evil. Sarah Martinez's response was swift and brutal. Derek, using deceased spouse's medical records for harassment constitutes intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're adding it to federal civil rights violations. The investigation expanded like wildfire through dry brush. Every rock investigators lifted revealed more corruption, more fraud, more systematic abuse of power. HOA financial audit revealed Patricia had diverted $63,000 over 6 years. Landscaping projects benefiting her property, consulting fees to family businesses, legal expenses defending illegal board decisions, all funded by neighbor harassment fines. Brandon's arrest record painted a perfect picture of escalating criminality protected by family corruption. 3 DUIs, 2 hit-and-runs, multiple reckless driving charges, all with mysteriously reduced sentences or dismissed charges. Craig's planning department connections explained everything. Zoning variances for properties where Patricia collected violation fines, building permits expedited for her allies, code enforcement complaints ignored against family friends. The beautiful irony crystallized. Patricia's systematic neighbor harassment had been funding criminal defense for her son, while her husband used government authority to cover up family crimes. Channel 7's investigative team arrived March 1st with cameras and questions that made Patricia's plastic smile shatter completely. Reporter Kevin Chang had done his homework. Mrs. Westmont, can you explain why HOA landscaping expenditures coincide perfectly with your son's legal troubles? Patricia's on-camera meltdown became viral internet gold. This is a conspiracy. Derek Morrison has brainwashed these people against my family. Kevin's follow-up question delivered the knockout punch. How do you respond to evidence showing you approved Derek's fence in 2018 but called it dangerous after your son crashed into it? Patricia stormed away from cameras screaming about fake news and illegal harassment. Her public breakdown provided prosecutors with perfect evidence of consciousness of guilt. But the investigation's biggest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Brandon cracked under pressure, March 5th. Facing federal charges for insurance fraud, state prosecution for multiple DUIs, and potential prison time, the spoiled college kid decided mommy and daddy weren't worth protecting anymore. His confession detailed years of family corruption. Patricia generating violation fines to pay his legal fees, Craig using planning authority to retaliate against neighbors who complained about Brandon's behavior, systematic intimidation of anyone who challenged family criminal activity. My mom told me crashing into Derek's fence was perfect, Brandon testified. She could blame him for everything and make him pay for my car instead of our insurance. The recorded confession provided prosecutors with criminal conspiracy evidence spanning 6 years of organized corruption. Sarah called that evening with news that made my electrical heart sing. Derek, Brandon's testimony just elevated this to federal RICO prosecution, systematic use of government authority for criminal enterprise. Patricia faced potential decades in federal prison. Craig was looking at criminal conspiracy charges that would end his career and pension. Brandon's cooperation deal might keep him out of prison, but his BMW driving days were permanently over. The final domino fell March 10th when Patricia's insurance company filed suit for recovery of all previous fraudulent claims. Not just Brandon's recent accident, every suspicious claim over 5 years, plus interest and penalties. Total liability. $147,000 secured against Patricia's house and assets. The woman who'd spent months trying to make me pay $28,000 for her son's mistake was now facing financial destruction that would bankrupt her family for decades. That night, reviewing prosecution updates in my garage, I felt electrical satisfaction crackling through every wire of my being. Patricia had escalated from harassment to systematic criminality, documenting every crime in official records. The circuit was complete. All connections verified, all evidence secured, all safety measures disengaged. Time to watch Patricia's world explode in spectacular fashion. March 15th, 7 p.m., Maple Ridge Community Center packed beyond fire code capacity. 47 residents crammed into a room designed for 20, with Channel 7's camera crew discreetly positioned near the back. Kevin Chang sat ready with his notepad while Patricia arrived fashionably late, flanked by Craig and their expensive attorney. She expected the usual crowd of 12 intimidated neighbors. Instead, She walked into her own public execution. I entered with Frank, Mrs. Stella, and our coalition of 14 affected homeowners, each carrying identical evidence folders, each ready for warfare. Patricia's plastic smile faltered when she saw the packed room. "Good evening, neighbors," Patricia began, trying to regain control. "Tonight we address Derek Morrison's ongoing violations and safety concerns." I stood up calmly. "Patricia, before we discuss my fence, shouldn't you recuse yourself due to conflict of interest involving your son's accident?" The room fell silent. Patricia's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, but her arrogance overruled legal wisdom. "I am the duly elected president of this board. I will not be intimidated by frivolous procedural objections." Perfect. She'd just violated HOA bylaws on camera while under criminal investigation. "Patricia, I'd like to present evidence regarding the December 15th accident." I connected my laptop to the community center projector, flooding the screen with security footage. Brandon's BMW speeding down our street at 2:30 a.m., clearly intoxicated driver weaving between parked cars, impact with my fence at estimated 40 miles per hour. The timestamp and metadata were prosecutor perfect. Gasps echoed through the packed room. Patricia jumped up, face flushed with fury. "This footage is irrelevant. Derek's fence has been a safety hazard for months." I clicked to the next slide. Original 2018 development plans showing my fence location, clearly marked as approved perimeter fencing, signed by HOA President Patricia Westmont. The silence was electric. 47 people staring at Patricia's signature authorizing the exact fence she'd spent months calling dangerous. "You signed off on this fence placement when you needed neighborhood approval," I said calmly. "Now you claim it was always hazardous to avoid paying for Brandon's drunk driving damage." Patricia's attorney grabbed her arm, but rage had replaced reason. "That signature doesn't mean anything. Circumstances change. Safety requirements evolve." Sarah Martinez stood up from the back row, her legal authority filling the room. "Mrs. Westmont, I'm attorney Sarah Martinez representing 14 homeowners in federal civil rights violations against this HOA board." She clicked her own laptop remote. Financial documents flooded the projection screen. HOA funds totaling $63,000 diverted to personal expenditures. Landscaping projects benefiting your property. Consulting fees paid to family businesses. Legal expenses defending violations of association bylaws. The numbers scrolled past Patricia's horrified face. Every corrupt transaction highlighted in prosecutorial red. "This is harassment!" Patricia screamed. "These people are conspiring against my family!" Kevin Chang stood up, camera operator focusing on Patricia's meltdown. "Mrs. Westmont, how do you respond to State Attorney General charges for embezzlement of HOA funds?" Patricia's world exploded in real time. "You can't film here. This is a private meeting." "Actually," Mrs. Stella spoke from the back, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard, "HOA meetings are public record under Arizona law. Mr. Chang has every right to document board corruption." The room erupted in applause. Patricia looked around wildly, realizing her neighbors weren't intimidated victims anymore. They were witnesses to her destruction. Frank stepped forward with his cop authority. "Patricia, I have a warrant here from the county sheriff for your arrest on charges of harassment, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice." Patricia's legs gave out. She collapsed into her chair as the legal reality crashed down. Craig tried to support her, but 2 more officers entered to arrest him for ethics violations and conspiracy. Brandon sat in the front row, head in his hands, watching his parents' corruption finally catch up with them. The emergency vote was unanimous. Patricia Westmont removed from HOA board, effective immediately. All violation fines imposed during her tenure declared invalid and refunded. Mrs. Stella elected interim president by acclamation. As handcuffs clicked around Patricia's wrists, she made one final desperate attempt. "Derek Morrison is a dangerous man. He's manipulated all of you." I stood up one last time, my voice carrying electrician's calm across the silent room. "Patricia, I'm just a retired guy who wanted to rebuild his life in peace. You decided I didn't belong in your neighborhood. You used HOA authority to harass, intimidate, and financially terrorize anyone who wouldn't bow to your corruption." The camera captured Patricia's face as reality penetrated her delusion. "You picked the wrong electrician to mess with." The sound of her Escalade being towed from the parking lot mixed with applause from 47 neighbors who'd finally found their voices. Justice tastes like victory served ice cold. The morning after Patricia's arrest, Maple Ridge Estates woke up to something we'd forgotten existed: peace. No violation notices, no Escalade stalking streets, no midnight bass pounding from Brandon's party's kid was too busy with public defenders to throw tantrums. Patricia's sentencing hearing 3 months later delivered justice with mathematical precision. 18 months federal prison for racketeering, 5 years probation, $147,000 in restitution. Craig got 12 months for conspiracy and lost his government pension. Brandon's cooperation deal kept him out of prison but cost him his BMW and college fund. The Westmont house sold to cover legal fees. New owners, the Patterson family, brought cookies instead of violation notices when they moved in. My fence got rebuilt better than before using Patricia's seized assets, every board laser level, every post perfectly aligned. Mrs. Stella taught me Chinese gardening techniques that tripled my vegetable yield. Frank's daily coffee visits became the highlight of my retirement routine. But the real transformation was neighborhood-wide. Our HOA surplus funds, $31,000 from canceled violation fines, launched the Sarah Morrison Memorial Scholarship for students studying conflict resolution, turning Patricia's harassment money into hope for kids who'd never met my wife but would benefit from her memory. The community garden project on Patricia's former spy lot became magical. I installed solar-powered irrigation systems while neighbors contributed cultural plants and cooking wisdom. Mrs. Stella's bok choy grew beside Janet's jalapenos, and Mike's tomatoes diversity Patricia had tried to destroy. Channel 7's HOA Horror Stories series went national, exposing suburban corruption from Phoenix to Miami. Arizona's HOA Accountability Act became model legislation for 12 other states. I testified before Congress about neighborhood civil rights, never imagining retirement would include Washington, D.C. trips. My HOA Accountability Network website gets 50 visitors daily from residents fighting petty tyrants nationwide. Sarah Martinez and I launched a legal clinic providing pro bono representation for HOA abuse victims. Our victory blueprint has liberated 17 neighborhoods from corrupt boards. The practical lessons became survival gospel. Document everything with timestamps. Security cameras are legal on your property. HOA finances are public records. Board members with conflicts must recuse or face criminal charges. Simple rules that level playing fields against suburban dictators. Spring's Unity Festival in my backyard drew 300 neighbors, triple attendance from year one. The smell of Mrs. Stella's dumplings mixing with BBQ smoke while children played in gardens where Patricia once hunted for violations felt like resurrection. Kevin Chang returned to film our success story. Derek, what's your biggest takeaway from this whole experience? Standing in my rebuilt garden, surrounded by neighbors who'd found their voices, I realized something profound. Patricia thought she was destroying one troublemaker who wouldn't bow to her authority. Instead, she accidentally taught an entire community how to stand up to bullies. The evening wound down with neighbors planning our next project, converting Patricia's old house into a community center. Poetic justice, the home base of neighborhood corruption, becoming headquarters for neighborhood cooperation. As guests departed with firm handshakes and genuine hugs, I stood on my porch looking at fence that started everything. Rebuilt stronger, protecting gardens that fed dozens, surrounding community that protected itself. My phone buzzes with messages from HOA victims across America. Tomorrow I drive to Flagstaff Consulting on veteran flag harassment. Next week, testimony in Colorado about selective enforcement. The mission continues because bullies don't take vacations. But tonight, I'm home, peaceful, surrounded by proof that good people can defeat corruption when they work together. Patricia wired me for destruction but accidentally connected me to something more powerful. Neighbors who chose courage over compliance. She thought she picked on a powerless retiree. She actually messed with an electrician who knew how to build systems that worked, including justice systems. If you're fighting HOA nightmares, share your stories below. You're not alone. Hit subscribe to HOA Stories for our next suburban justice case. Wait until you hear what happened when another Karen tried to ban my veteran neighbor's flag display. Spoiler alert, she messed with the wrong Marine.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.